welcome. For those who don't know me, I'm Debbie Wheeler, the Manager of Academic Skills, and I have the supreme pleasure of introducing this final, I believe, session for what's been a great conference. Before we begin, I'll just pay our respects to all First Nations elders, both past, present, across all lands where Charles Sturt University staff and students reside. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country. We also pay respects to other Aboriginal people and elders present here. I'm on the Yugambeh country this morning. Happy for you to put in the chat where you're coming from. I always learn new place names that I haven't known before. You've come to a great session. Everybody on this list, I know almost everybody on this list. Everybody I know are wonderful, wonderful people, and I'm sure we're going to learn a lot from this morning. Unfortunately, the first presentation that you can see on the screen won't be happening today, but we are going to start with the wonderful people from the library. Lauren and Lorraine, I'll just stop sharing now and you can take it away. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie, and hi, everyone. My name's Lauren Brumby. I'm currently Acting Manager Student Learning, and I'm joining from Wiradjuri country here in Wagga, and I'm joined by my colleague, Lorraine Rose. Lorraine, I'll throw over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lorraine Rose. I'm a faculty librarian with Science and Health based at the Port Macquarie campus on Biripi country.
So our session is all about how the library has leveraged disruptive innovation to embrace GenAI. AI catapulted itself into the library in the form of ChatGPT at the end of 2022, when we started receiving requests for help sourcing information that was based on what we now understand as hallucinations. As a result, we began discussing the sources of information that these AI tools were scraping, the quality of the information, the legal and ethical issues around copyright infringement, the algorithm used to formulate a response, and strategies for effective prompt engineering, which aren't all that dissimilar to developing a search strategy. Naturally, we also started receiving inquiries from HDR students and research teams about specific AI tools to help with literature reviews, citation mapping, and paraphrasing. And the library is also part of a few communities of practice across Australasia, and these group discussions started to centre around strategies for developing AI literacy within the library and how these institutions planned on supporting their clients to use these tools. So with all these events combined, it was clear that we really needed to step into this AI space. So how has Charles Sturt Library responded? Well, our first step was to prioritise staff development in a few ways. Our university librarian created an AI Teams channel for all library staff to share links to web articles, webinars, and AI tools that we've discovered. Staff have volunteered to participate in an AI working group where we're exploring ways to leverage AI to improve staff productivity and tools that may benefit our researchers and HDR students. The library also has our own monthly discussion group, and colleagues recently presented a session on AI tools that they've used and their experiences supporting staff and students to use those tools, and this was a great way to share lived experiences. Some library teams have also added an item to their regular meeting agenda as a reminder to share new tools or to raise AI-related information that they may have heard elsewhere in the university. So these have all been really useful strategies to help build knowledge and capability within the library, as well as to collate various resources for future projects. While developing our own knowledge, the library was also working on support resources for our clients, which included 2 library guides, one specifically about GenAI and the other about evaluating online information sources. These have been extremely well utilised in the short time that they've been published, which is great to see. And additionally, we've implemented strategies to support the development of AI literacy in the areas of learning and teaching and research, while also identifying areas requiring further exploration in the spirit of lifelong learning.
Thanks, Lauren. When we think of AI, ChatGPT probably comes to mind first, but there are plenty of other AI tools we have at our disposal to use for evidence synthesis and in research. AI applications can help brainstorm ideas, scope the literature, and provide summaries of works. If undertaking systematic-like reviews, they can be used to find the seminal or gold set articles and for citation tracking. There is also a plethora of tools to help in the screening and review processes. AI tools in the future will become your research assistants, analyze your data, and edit your work. One of the outcomes of our AI working groups in the library and from discussion within our faculty teams has been to identify that there is a need for advice and education around AI research tools. We have started adding lists of useful tools to our Science Honours Library Guide and offered some library instruction on these tools in classes and appointments. Though this is a constantly changing landscape as applications move to paid or premium versions or new tools appear, which is one of the reasons that we are taking an educative approach to using these tools. The library has a role to teach students skills and strategies to guide the wise use of AI. In fact, we already advise in many of these skill areas. Library's core business, as Lauren's already mentioned, has always been information retrieval and evaluation. Now we have a new tool to assess. Skills in information literacy and digital literacy are more important than ever. Plus, we can include another literacy, AI literacy. We can curate lists of tools, which we've started doing, recommend where these tools can be used, and how to appraise them so you can choose the best tool. We can teach prompt engineering. This is where you create prompts that guide large language models to deliver outcomes. To do this effectively, you need to understand both AI systems and human language. It is about using the correct language and asking the right questions so the large language model produces useful outputs. We already instruct in Boolean searching and advanced Google searches, so using great prompts is an extension of these. By recommending students to think critically, they can learn how to detect responses that contain inaccurate or misleading information and learn to question and validate the facts given. We have long used the CRAP test to evaluate resources, but expanding to other types of evaluation methods, such as the SIFT method, will help assess outputs from AI. There are current discussions that the pedagogical approaches of AI literacy and critical thinking won't be enough, and that we should be promoting self-regulated and co-regulated learning strategies with learning about AI. We can focus on ensuring students not only use AI wisely, but also understand, adapt to, and learn collaboratively with it and become lifelong learners. We can show the strengths and limitations of the tools. Asking the questions, does it enable you to draw on all the current knowledge? And does it distinguish between reliable and unreliable research? Thinking about what the source of the data is and what is the limitations of that data set. So building an understanding on how these tools work, the misinformation that can be produced, how the algorithm generates the responses that you see, plus the bias from the data sets that will be replicated in those results that come up. As Lauren mentioned, factually incorrect responses, i.e. hallucinations, are a limit to the utility of large language models. And in our case, students are using fabricated citations that do not represent actual scholarly works. We can raise awareness of this problem, alert users to the fact that you can't completely trust ChatGPT, and to investigate your sources. This is about learning what tools don't work. For example, ChatGPT-3 produces more hallucinations than ChatGPT-4. As my colleagues mentioned earlier this week, we can use the strategy of critical ignoring, which is selectively filtering and blocking information to reduce exposure to that which is false or of low trustworthiness. And these are just some of those skills that we can convey to produce AI literate students.
Sorry, Lorraine, 1 minute. Well done.
Thank you. As AI becomes more prevalent in society, knowing how to use it will be an increasingly valuable skill. Teaching how to use AI tools with integrity for academic purposes, plus how to harness these technologies, will support students in all aspects of their future lives and prepare them to use it for a positive impact. As librarians, we are committed to learning in this space with our discussion and working groups. We are lifelong learners and leading by example by using AI tools for productivity in our role. By embracing AI in our work, we have become a valuable resource for students and staff, so we can all become AI savvy learners.
Perfect. Thank you. That's a great way to start. Thank you very much. Cutting edge there. We're going to continue with Hector Rodriguez Valdes, and apologies for however I pronounce that, Hector. He's going to talk to us about critical thinking.
That was perfect. Thank you. Just sharing my screen quickly. All right. So thanks, Debbie, and thank you everyone for coming. I'd like to start with this quote about critical thinking in education. I chose this quote because I think it paints an accurate picture of how critical thinking appears in education in general. Probably everyone here agrees that critical thinking is a highly valuable skill that university education must develop, yet we hardly ever teach it explicitly. In this presentation, I'll talk about critical thinking and the process of developing a new critical thinking subject for the soon-to-be-launched enabling courses. This subject is one of 4 subjects that are part of the Access Child Cert entry course. The students can gain guaranteed entry or transition to the undergraduate certificate in university preparation after completing this course. Both of these courses will launch in session 2024-30 and launch in Brightspace. In the presentation, I'll cover the following. I'll give some background information. I'll present some data on critical thinking. I'll talk about some gaps and opportunities. Then I'll talk about critical thinking in pedagogy. I'll also talk about how critical thinking has been conceptualized. Then I'll move on to strategies, technologies, and tools implemented in the design of the subject. And finally, I'll just finish with some concluding remarks and possible implications as well. So teaching critical thinking has been a focus of primary and high school education in the last decade, and different approaches have aimed to improve this skill among students. As I will show, there is an ongoing debate about the effectiveness of the interventions to teach critical thinking. However, there is a point that is generally agreed on, namely, many students still lack critical thinking skills after completing their degree. Unfortunately, this debate is not settled. There is good evidence that some types of critical thinking in education are effective, and there is also evidence that good critical thinking education is lacking in tertiary education or is not happening enough. However, we can be certain that critical thinking is valuable. I think that's something we can all agree on. And students must develop these thinking skills. Why is this so important? Well, there is evidence, and it's very clear and concerning, that including one recent report by the OECD, that have shown that a troubling trend, that is that students entering the professional world ill-equipped with critical thinking skills. This deficiency spans over 2 decades of academic research showing a growing consensus that graduates are underprepared in this essential capacity. The root of this problem, I would argue that there is a significant gap in our teaching methodology. There is a disproportionate emphasis on what to think rather than how to think. Our educational structures have traditionally valued the accumulation of knowledge over the process of thought, favor content absorption over cultivation of analytical and evaluative skills. A study by the Foundation for Young Australians shows a correlation that individuals who demonstrate strong critical thinking skills have a significant edge in employability and more potential in salaries, or earning higher salaries, that is. The benefits don't just stop at employability. For example, some have found that students who develop critical thinking improve their general academic performance. That is to say, students equipped with these skills show an enhanced ability to analyze, synthesize, evaluate information, improvements that lead to deeper learning. I would argue that these benefits go beyond individuals and have a ripple effect in society. Also, with the advent of AI, we must reflect on how the evaluative skills that students develop at university serve them when they evaluate information, when they research, or learn in a digital environment. I see this as an opportunity to help students develop critical thinking skills that they can apply in different contexts. Let us first address a common assumption. Many institutions operate under the belief that critical thinking is an automatic outcome of tertiary education. That is, universities often view the development of critical thinking skills as a natural byproduct of their academic programs. However, evidence points to a more nuanced reality. Research indicates that while university education contributes to improving these skills, explicit targeted instruction in critical thinking, such as specialized courses, yield significant improvements. Techniques like argument mapping or instruction in logic have been shown to yield improvements in this area. These two elements are included in this subject, by the way. Also, how we conceptualize critical thinking affects our approach to improve this skill. There are two prevailing perspectives on how we define critical thinking. First, the generalist view. They see critical thinking as a universal set of skills applicable across various domains, and the specificist view, which argues that critical thinking is context-dependent and varies according to subject matter. These are forced dichotomies in my mind, as there is a more nuanced approach to teaching critical thinking, one where we develop general rules and frameworks of how to think, but we put them into practice in the real world with real problems. As students use these frameworks to solve problems, reflect on their beliefs, and see how these can have personal and social implications. This approach and the work of others underscore the importance of suspending prior beliefs, openness to alternative viewpoints, engaging in reflection and rationality, which have helped in the design of the subject. So we're not only talking about a specific set of critical thinking skills, but also developing a disposition, and this is key in this subject, about the type of thinking that leads to knowledge, truth, and constructive dialogue. The subject design entails 4 key stages. Initially, the course introduces students to the fundamental concept of critical thinking, elaborating on its application and context. Here we discuss critical thinking as a type of thinking that happens or should happen in different contexts and help students position themselves in these by using real-life examples, scenarios, case studies, and thought experiments. Then we discuss the significance of critical thinking as part of society, particularly by discussing contemporary issues and the importance of using critical thinking when forming beliefs. Here we also introduce the First Nations Cultural Awareness Journey as an embedded resource and an assessment where students must engage in constructive dialogue with their peers. The third stage provides a toolkit for students to assist in their capacity to evaluate media information, including AI-generated content, and learn about biases and how this can get in the way of knowledge and truth. Finally, the fourth stage assists students in articulating a belief with clarity and confidence. Here we introduce argument mapping. As students learn to visually organize their reasoning, enabling them to present their ideas persuasively and coherently. The culmination of this process is an interactive oral assessment, where students must demonstrate their critical thinking by justifying a belief through a well-reasoned defensible argument. So what I'd like to do now, just in the few minutes that I have left, I want to show some of these elements in Brightspace and how they're looking. I'll start just briefly with the argument maps, because argument maps is something that there's a lot of research on the benefits of teaching logic or defending arguments using this type of tools, especially important for enabling students. In general, in the theory of argumentation, we teach argumentative discussions and how to structure arguments by using what we call standard arguments, where we number the premises. But with argument maps, it allows students to make connections visually with graphics, where they can connect the reasons and conclusions. So it makes it a lot easier for students to structure their thinking in this way. We give students a lot of opportunities to develop arguments like this, places for them to practice. And also we have what we're trying to embed, or we're embedding the Miro tool. I know that there's still work to be done here. I think I have something on the screen that is gonna look what we wanna have in the end before we launch the subject, but it'll be a place for students to work on this Miro board where they can develop their arguments, make connections between conclusions, premises. They can add things, they can share them, and we're planning on implementing that tool in Brightspace, which is great. I believe that in the next few weeks, this is going to be released in Brightspace. Also, we have this like a Padlet also for students to share their arguments. The other tool that I want to talk about just briefly is the graded discussions. This is something that I spoke about in yesterday's talk. If people are interested, I recommend people watching that talk. There's not enough time for me to cover that, but that is an important element of this subject, is getting students to engage with each other and developing these forums where it enables students to share their ideas and thoughts and so on. Just a quick conclusion, and also with the interactive orals, that's the final assessment where the students get to put everything into practice. They get to apply what they learn in different contexts in that oral interactive. So it's also very interesting. So going back just to the presentation, my conclusion, just here. Just as a forward-looking strategy, we have an opportunity to measure the effects of purpose-critical thinking interventions. By doing so, we can track the progress of students enrolling in the subject and gain valuable insight into the efficacy of our curriculum compared to the experiences of students navigating other enabling courses. This data will inform the continual refinement of our approaches and contribute to the broader discussion on critical thinking in higher education. And just briefly, I'd like to thank people like Catherine Newell, Gareth Smart, Kate Greenup, that have given a lot of help and support in the design of the subject in Brightspace. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Hector. There we go. People again. Thank you. That's great. So we've had artificial intelligence skills, thinking skills, critical thinking skills. Now we're going to move on to employability skills with Nicole Mitchell.
Thank you, everyone. Hope you can see that okay. So yes, I'm going to talk about the Employability Skills Audit, which is all about making learning meaningful in work integrated learning and workplace learning. So what is the Employability Skills Audit? Well, I'm glad you asked. So that it's actually a tool which is used in those work integrated learning and workplace learning subjects in the Bachelor of Business. It involves the self-assessment of skill level on a range of employability skills from novice to expert using a 7-point rating scale. It consists of 9 general employability skills categories, each with a number of subcategories underneath those. And these are based on extensive research and literature review by Liz Bracken. It's built in Articulate Storyline 360, stored in DOMS and transferable to Brightspace, yay. It has been an ongoing project and started as part of the Bachelor of Business Revitalisation, and Liz Bracken and myself have been working on this since then. And the current iteration was built by Gareth Smart, he's been very busy, and Peter Vitez, the digital media technologist. So what does it look like? Well, it presents like each of those skill categories presents like a box like this in Interact 2. And it consists of a sliding scale. So we have the broad category at the top, some more detailed descriptors of skills underneath, instructions on how to use the tool on the right, and then a sliding scale, which is a click and drag. And this is one that I've prepared earlier. All right. Okay, and what you can see is by hovering over the eyes, some of these have a little bit more detail, so they'll pop out. There's a detailed explanation of the skill level. Again, hover over it and it'll explain, you know, what describes what are the skills like at a novice 1, 2, 3, and so on level. And when you click on this button down here, it'll generate a summary, so you don't have to do any calculations. And then it takes you to a screen that looks like this. So what we have here is this heat dial, which is the average of my skill level. You can see I'm just above a 3. There's a box here that takes you to the previous screen. But what I like about this is it gives you a really clear snapshot of where my strengths are and where I may require to pay a little bit more attention in terms of upskilling myself. And then there's the option there then to generate the PDF. And that looks like this. So it is recommended use Chrome. That works best. I think in Firefox, you just get a black box. So use Chrome for this. And I have set up an Employability Skills Audit org site that you can search for. It's self-enroll, and also provide the link at the end of this session. So please do that after the presentation. So how did this tool evolve? Well, we started off with a paper version back in the day when we picked up this project about revitalising the Bachelor of Business. And Liz and I started talking. Look, we thought there's a really opportunity here to push this further and use this much more extensively. Also, I was due for an update in terms of the skill level, the skills that are listed, and there was only the 8 categories, and also have a more nuanced approach to rating, because I think novice, competent, expert doesn't leave much room there. So the second version of the audit was, of course, based then on that research that Liz did, drawing on a range of government sources, literature, as well as our own graduate learning outcomes, because we wanted to use that consistent language as well that familiarise students with those skills. It was built out in PebblePad. The great thing about that was that students could actually upload evidence to support their skill level rating and also comments for each subcategory and then save it to their account. But we found that there were so many challenges with students having access difficulties and also challenges with marking. We just didn't have the time to and the ability to really get the whole teaching team up to scratch in terms of development. And it looked okay, but it was sort of a bit disconnected, and it wasn't able to give us that summary of skill, which I think is really useful. So back to the drawing board, and I came up with, this is what was going on in my head. This is like, I'd love it to look something like this, with lots going on there. I won't go through it all now because we just don't have time, but do please have a look at the slides you'll also find in the org site. So we pitched this to the digital media technology team, and they said, yep, we can do something. And that's where how we've come up with the current version, number 3. So yes, we did work very closely with the DMTs, Gareth and Peter. They were great. It was fantastic. Now call them the audit gurus. We were able to share our vision, and it was great to collaborate together. There was some limitations of the software, and that was some constraint. We didn't quite get to the what I had in my head, but we developed some great workarounds that I think we've worked really well. It was trialed last session for the first time in the one subject, Biz 114, that I also had the pleasure of teaching, which was great because it gave me that additional insight on how it could be used. And we would love to now develop this further in terms of developing a proof of concept for an app, which would be even better than what we've got already. So how is or will it be used in the Bachelor of Business? Well, in the Bachelor of Business, we have a suite of work integrated and workplace learning. They actually start working towards work placement in first year and second session. They don't actually have work placement, but we really start them to think about employability skills and work integrated learning and get them ready to go for work placement in the second year and then again in the third year. So we've used it last session very much as a teaching tool. So it was a great way in class, either online or face-to-face, to familiarize students with those employability skills. And we got the students to use a tool in class and talk about the different categories and so on, which was great. It's a useful self-assessment tool and reflection tool. Students can use it anytime. It's a great way for them to identify their strengths, and that informs career planning then. And also we encourage them to really think about, now, how can I prove to a potential employer that I have the skill level I say I have? So think about collecting and curating some really concrete evidence of that. In terms of identifying those gaps, then of course you're identifying development opportunities, which they can then seek out in work placement. It can inform what electives they choose to do, especially when it comes to EMPs. That's a whole other presentation about transferable employability skills. Don't have time for that today, even though I'm talking fast. And of course, other PD opportunities as well. And again, I loved hearing the library talking about lifelong learning, because that's what we're trying to create here too, that habit of continually. It's not a one-off thing to check in on my skills. No, it's repeated over the course of the degree, so they can really keep track and reflect on their employability skills development over time and take the required actions to get them to that skill level they want. Now on this slide, again, a lot more detail. Again, if you're interested, go and have a look. There's some ideas there in more detail about assessment tasks and how we've used them across the 3 subjects. So more specifically though, how can the audit tool be used pre and work placement? So before placement, again, it's about that benchmarking. Where are my students at now? Where are my level of skills at now? And that might inform not just what goes on at work placement, but even where to do the work placement. So if a student has experience only working with their uncle in their local accounting firm, they might say, look, my cultural competence skills are fairly limited. I haven't been exposed to a diverse workplace. I'm going to try and get a placement at a much larger organization, particularly for that, specifically for that purpose. So it starts also to think, students to think about, right, this is a really good opportunity for me to develop those skills and get really kind of motivated and engaged with the process of work placement. So during placement, student can then seek out those opportunities for skill development and collect evidence as well, and get into that habit of collecting, even though it might be only small pieces at this stage. And then post-placement, facilitate reflection again, using the tool, doing it again and saying, have my skill levels changed? Have they gone up? And possibly have they maybe they've gone down. I think it was a Dunning-Kruger effect, where there's like unconscious incompetence when you're kind of overestimating your skill level and you don't know that you're actually not as good as you thought. So, you know, that's a really, again, a powerful thing. And of course, we would talk to the students about this, and that might be the case. And then you see the arrows going back to, if it's first time around, go to work placement again and go through the cycle again. Or of course, enter then into graduate employment using those skills. So just a very quick, simple summary of how we use the audit in a assessment. We got students to do the audit, add evidence and proof of skill level, and then we got them to find a graduate job. Now, these were first year students. This is the first time they started looking at what's going to happen in 3 years' time when I graduate, really, in terms of what can I be doing, what skills do I need. We get them to compare their skills in the job ad to their current skills as identified in the audit, and then go, okay, how am I going to fill those gaps? How am I going to make sure I have those skills I needed to get that really cool graduate job that's advertised on the Charles Sturt job board? So how did we do? Well, it's very early days. Like I mentioned, the session's only just finished. But the useful thing that we ended up doing, and this might be a little trick to get, you know, a very good response rate in terms of insights into your students, is at the end of assessment 3, we put a reflection on learning box or table like this to get students to complete. And even though it was unsolicited, we actually got quite a few comments about the skills audit specifically, which is really useful. I've only had a chance to go through half of all those, so we will be compiling more information on this, and we'll be delving deeper into it. But for this student, for example, the question was, what has helped you the most? Well, the employability skills audit has been the most beneficial part. So that was great. Another comment was, taking the employability skills audit highlighted what skills I did have and what I need to develop. Another comment was, the skills audit developed a clear idea of what career I aspire after I graduate. And how the last comment there is about how your view on employability skills has grown or changed. It says, I've also realized the work that I still need to do in developing these skills, and the skills audit really made that evident. So to me, for these students, particularly, that audit has been very useful and meaningful in making that whole idea of employability skills more present there. I also designed a series of questions to add into the student evaluation survey, which were also, you know, included. And we're just looking at, I mean, this is the first look at these, really. They only came out on Monday. You can see here that overall response for the internal students was very favourable, less so for the distance students. So that's something that we will explore further down the track. So what is next? A deeper delve into that, all the evaluation, and especially that feedback we got in the assessments. We need to update content of the employability skills audit. Of course, add the AI skills. Thanks, librarians, for that wonderful presentation. Yes. And also, I would like to have another look about what's included in terms of critical thinking skills. So thank you, Hector, for that. So, like I said, the wish list is to then push it further into a mobile app and have all these features listed here. So do jump in when you get a chance to have a look at the Employability Skills Audit org site, and please get in touch if you have any questions, if you want to talk any further. I do think this tool could be adapted. And Gareth, I think he's in the presentation today. I'm not putting you on the spot here, but I do believe that we can adapt. Now this tool is built, we could add skills, we could take skills out, we can make it shorter or longer. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to develop this wonderful tool and push it broader as well. And also including possibly specific professional skills that, say, someone may have as well. So thank you very much. And I will put the thing now, can stop talking. I can put the link in the chat. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Oh, we are motoring through. That's great. Thank you very much. Last, but certainly not least, and with a cast of thousands, whose names I am going to read out just because I think at least one may be missing today. But we've got Sarah Teakel, Debbie Clatworthy, Erin Rose Bradshaw, Jemma Galvin, Di Middleton, and Tara Johnson, who are going to talk about empowering learners through providing meaningful feedback. Over to you, I imagine, Sarah, is it?
Thanks, Debbie. So I'm Sarah Teakel and I manage the Embedded Tutor program at Charles Sturt, and I'm going to very quickly introduce our team of first year study advisors and their talk, and it's titled Empowering Learners, Providing Meaningful Feedback to Improve Feedback Literacy and Increase Student Retention. And today you'll hear from 5 of our first year study advisors who work across the courses shown here, just regarding their approaches to supporting students when they meet with them one-on-one to provide feedback on their assessments. So I'll hand it over to Debbie.
Hey, thank you, Sarah. So tutoring support in higher education is established as having a positive impact on student learning and is considered for improving student success and retention. Research has demonstrated that it enables student growth with one-on-one individual attention that can focus on their specific learning needs. However, more research is needed to critique the tutor role and effectiveness of online tutoring. The embedded tutors are faculty-specific tutors, one-on-one or small groups, predominantly one-on-one. The time frame for tutoring session varies depending on the faculty, subject and tutor availability. It does not include tutoring services such as academic skills support. The Accord interim report for universities included our embedded tutor program as an exemplar. The report identifies the need for tutor programs to be expanded to support students in their learning journey across the education sector. The pedagogical approaches used within the team focus on a pedagogy of kindness, believing students and believing in students, where the tutoring includes caring, compassion, respect, empathy, and is non-judgmental. Also, it considers student diversity to enhance their learning and understanding. This is combined with social constructivism and empowerment pedagogy. Thank you.
Hi everyone. As you'll see in the upcoming slides, all tutors bring their individual teaching style and discipline awareness to their embedded tutoring sessions. However, there is broad consistency in the way tutoring sessions are delivered, and here are some of those commonalities. So academics promote embedded tutor sessions via subject site and direct emails, with a particular focus in the weeks leading up to assessment due dates. Embedded tutors are also available to meet with a class at the beginning of session to chat about the program and how we can support them with their assessments. Bookings, students are able to book via their subject site and receive automated prompts via email reminding them when to submit their draft and providing them with the Zoom meeting link and calendar reminders for their actual session. Assessment drafts are submitted via Turnitin portal, allowing tutors to provide students with guidance regarding academic writing, subject content, and academic integrity. Tutors have a 10-minute block prior to each meeting to read and provide brief written feedback via notes often on student work, and then conduct a 20-minute meeting with the student one-on-one via Zoom.
Okay, as first year study advisors, we work across a range of subjects to provide timely support and subject-specific assistance. So what are some of the benefits of this approach? It ensures increased continuity of support. Students have a key person that you can continue to refer to, ask questions of, or communicate any concerns to. We're able to provide targeted outreach and support. This might include to students who may have failed subjects previously, have had little access to the subject site, or have not submitted their first task. In our role, we have increased availability and flexibility of embedded tutor appointments, so we often become a familiar face to many of our students. Collaboration and faculty buy-in is vital to the success of the program. first year study advisors are able to provide these ongoing partnerships with tutors and lecturers. We're also able to provide non-teacher educative intervention for academic integrity. So as well as meeting with students, advisors have also presented workshops, including those examining feedback from subject markers to improve feedback literacy. So what is my approach to my sessions? I start by checking in. I find out how the students are finding the subjects, any obstacles they might be facing. I assess what the student key needs are at this point. Is it subject content, use of readings, or more technical elements of the paper? I help students to verbalise. I find getting students to explore their ideas out loud, especially in reflections, helps them to get these ideas down on paper. I give students a few key points to improve upon and consider as part of a final review. And lastly, I reassure and encourage. At the end of the day, it's about instilling confidence in the students' own abilities.
So I work within the Faculty of Education, and my guiding principles, or rather some top tips for my embedded sessions, are number one is to echo what students are seeing and hearing in their subject. So this includes watching the weekly lecture so that I can echo the points being made there and the resources being recommended. I also echo what the modules and assignment templates are advising. And finally, I stay across the subject discussion board so I can clarify any points that have been covered on that platform, as well as building students' confidence to go ahead and use that platform independently as well. Number two is to support students as they navigate the subject. This includes ensuring they know where to access relevant subject information as they need, or any resources that we've discussed in the session, as well as making students aware of the online support service that are available outside of this embedded tutor program from their subject side and also from the academic skills team. Number three is to feed forward, to provide feedback and guidance that can be directly applied to the assignment students are working on. I do this guided by the resources provided by the subject coordinator or lecturer, as well as directing them to academic skills resources that may be relevant for their particular learning need. My fourth top tip is to provide students with examples to support my feedback and help them scaffold their learning. So for example, this could include modelling how to write a topic sentence and then directing them to a resource about topic sentence. So they have a backup in place when our session is over and students revise their work independently. So we want this program to be able to feed on to all subjects and all years that students are engaged with us. And finally, I ensure students know where they can seek relevant support for their learning, most notably other CHALSTERT services, referring them back to the module, specific weekly content, and or their lecturer or subject discussion board.
So I'm one of the tutors in the social work and arts subjects. Some of the strategies that I use with tutoring are first to validate student feelings about the difficulties of learning as normative and developmentally appropriate. I use a lot of humour to create an atmosphere of ease to facilitate learning and motivate students by fostering a growth mindset about learning during interactions. I help students to contextualize theory into real-world practice by providing examples of what theory might look like in practice, using analogy and asking reflective questions of students. I also role model skills and have students demonstrate these skills, such as finding things in the journal database or writing paragraphs. And finally, one of the things I find myself doing quite often is performing the role of an accidental counsellor. So maybe the advice will be to have a walk or take a break between study.
In nursing, the following are what I've identified as being key to the tutor role, and I approach all of these with kindness. Listening to students is very important to identify individual student need and key areas for tutoring. Referral to other services to support students as needed. From listening to the students, you can identify if they need academic skills, library, counselling, or accessibility and inclusion. I always check or recap key points to make sure that the student understands. This is sometimes challenging with only 30 minutes per session. Validation of students' worth by acknowledging their achievement is another key point. This encouragement can enhance the students' engagement with their studies, and that's most important to keep them retained in the course. Also, check with the student that what tutoring has covered, and has it answered any questions they had and covered all the points that they need.
Within business, I see my role as guiding students with actionable advice. The one-to-one appointments involve listening and responding to students' concerns within the Zoom calls, and my review of their draft assessment, which usually occurs prior to that session. Sometimes there are underlying issues beyond what is being described by the student as their area of primary concern. And it's about trying to unravel this and engage with them in a way that will increase their understanding of their subject matter and confidence. The end game is to educate as we converse and provide the students with a couple of actionable strategies which will likely improve the overall quality of their assessment and their knowledge of key concepts. I work collaboratively with the lecturers and aim to provide direct, clear advice to the students, and always encourage and praise them for their efforts to date.
Finally, we have here some of the results of tutoring during 2022 for the social work and arts embedded tutoring. These are students that I met with during that time. In 2022, I met with 235 students and completed a total of 417 tutor sessions. 25% of these students were students that had came back for a second appointment or a third appointment. In relation to the graphs, we can see here in graph 1 that students who met with a tutor were less likely to fail and more likely to pass. In graph 2, we can see here the shift in grade distributions, as students that met with a tutor were more likely to receive a credit, distinction, or high distinction. And finally, in graph 3, we can see in relation to the retention of students, students that met with a tutor were more likely to be retained and enrolled in the following year, which was 2023. And finally, there was this fantastic quote, which we had from the student feedback here. An anonymous student stated, "This is such a valuable tool for students and increases the chance of success. If I was researching universities and was torn between the embedded tutor option, I would choose the university that was offered the embedded tutoring." So I think that speaks highly to the success of the program.
Thank you so much, ladies. And that's us. So pass it back to you, Debbie.
Thank you. There we go. Faces again. That's much nicer. I don't think we need this big slide that says questions. I've been watching the chat and I haven't seen lots of questions. So while I rabbit on for just a second, that's your chance to get ready and stick your hand up and ask your burning questions. And to get you going, sorry, first of all, thank you everyone for presenting. That was great. But I'm going to go backwards and ask the embedded tutors and the first year advisors we know students come with all sorts of issues, but if there was one thing you wished all new students knew and that we as supporters and academic staff could convey, what would that be?
I think the problem with this question is we might all have something a little bit different, but for me, I think it's obviously we've all been there. So there's no harm in asking, there's no silly questions, this sort of thing. Kindness is free. So we just try to be as open as we can when we meet with each individual student. But I suppose, Debbie, do you have?
No, I was just stepping in. If nobody else stepped in, you answered it well, Sarah. Thank you.
I would just jump in and say, I often see a lot of students that I wish they knew what good quality assessments looks like. And it's just modeling is just so important. We see so many students and they're just not being given the opportunity to see what a quality piece of university work looks like that is relevant to their field, whether it be marketing or management or whatnot.
Yeah, I'd like to second that and kind of expand by saying I think it's modelling across the board. I think when first-year students who might not have families or a social milieu around university, it's a bit like stepping into a void. So if they've got someone that they can, in a very relaxed and casual way, share a screen, guide them through what the Interact 2 site does for them, show them where the modules are, show them where the video recordings are. And as Tara was saying, being able to see an assessment to understand that's where I'm aiming for, just being able to navigate, just being able to know what the resources are from an individual just gives them the confidence that they are not existing in a void. There is a way to move from totally unknown to connected and finding the resources that can assist them.
I've lost track. Is that everybody? Sarah?
I think, Erin, do you have?
Oh, yeah. So I was just going to say, during the teacher awards, one of the academics mentioned scaffolding confidence. And I think that's that really connected with me, because I think that's a lot of what we do in the embedded tutor program. So one of the things I've observed is, no matter the skill of the student, one of the things, they may be high performing or lower performing, one of the things that tie them all together when they book in is that they're feeling not a lot of confidence. So we can kind of validate where they're at and help them understand where they are sort of developmentally in their learning and skills.
I'm going to move over to Linda now. What burning question do you have, Linda?
I'm changing tack slightly because I wanted to ask Hector a question about the critical thinking material. It was a really good talk, Hector. I teach into biomedical science, and I was wondering, are you aware of any kind of a specific instrument that lets you measure a student's ability in critical thinking? Because I know there's that tension between context-specific and general skills, but it would be really nice to be able to see whether what you're trying to do is actually having an effect.
Yep, good question. So yes, there's some recognized tools. One of them, or the one that is used by many universities, is the Cornell critical thinking tool. And they use that tool to measure the students before they enroll in some of these critical thinking subjects. We haven't embedded or introduced that in the subject, but however, I think that's really interesting if we want to gather some meaningful data and then maybe even publish something to do something like that, where we can track the students' progression before and after. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful.
On the back of that one, Hector, can I ask, do you know if you are the first dedicated critical thinking subject in the university, or are there others?
I think this is the first full 14-week subject. There's another subject in critical thinking that I also teach in, which is in the School of Social Work and Arts, but it's a mini subject. It's called EMP. So it's critical thinking and decision making. So it's more focused on more logic, geared towards game theory and decision making. It's only a 4-week subject, so mini subject. I think this is the first one that is a 14-week subject. Yes.
I'm sure there'll be people knocking at the door at some point. Kirsten, what would you like to ask?
There's been a few sessions during CSU EdX on artificial intelligence, and I know that there's some capacity for some assessment feedback to be offered using that. So I was just wondering what the team thinks about that, I suppose, and what they offer that would be different to what AI could offer.
I don't know who wants to. Jemma, do you want to jump in?
Oh, look, I tend to believe the impact that we can have is really in preventative medicine. It's, from approaching this from a more positive perspective rather than a policing perspective. If we can give students skills to feel like they can effectively understand their content, understand what's being asked of them, and be able to demonstrate their understanding through their assessments, I like to think that their focus is going to be on what they can achieve rather than how they can manipulate the system. So I think, AI isn't something I have delved extensively into. My focus is very much on how I can, in a one-to-one, create the human side from CSU instill confidence, instill ability, so that the students can focus on their work rather than sourcing AI to assist them. Now, look, that sounds like a very Mary Jane response, and it's not meant to be. But I think it takes a number of approaches. Yes, policing is one of them, but I think our work, and certainly my focus, is in the how can we develop the skills and how can we personalise their university experience so their focus is really on their learning and development rather than the AI that they can source to assist them.
Thanks, Jemma. I think that's so important, as well as we're sitting on the side of the fence at the moment. It's trying to prevent that as much as possible. So, if we do come across these sorts of things, we're just making sure that the students have a really friendly, educative conversation around what's appropriate in preparation of their assessments and things like this. Erin?
I was just going to say, I think it connects really well with Hector's presentation around supporting students with critical thinking. When it is appropriate to use different sources and how to assess them, and why, ChatGPT, the limitations of it, and why it might not be appropriate in different ways.
Thank you. There is a question. Well, Jemma Wilkins, I think you've had two questions. Starting with the one directed at Nicole. Do you want to ask that in person?
Yes, thanks. Hi, everybody. I've had some experience working with Nicole with the audit from a careers and skills team perspective, but I just wanted to follow up with you, Nicole. What do you envisage students actually doing with the evidence that you ask them to upload? I know you mentioned there were some difficulties, but I'm just wondering what they can then go on and build out of that in your mind.
Okay, so really what in that scenario is that we want them to upload that evidence so they have it at their fingertips when they are looking then for jobs. And, sometimes one might be more relevant than the other depending on the job they're going for. So say that they've coached the local soccer team for 10 years, maybe a good skill to have for certain roles, perhaps less important than the other one. So, and it's also to get them to get into that habit of, I don't know about you guys, but I find, what have I been doing? You have to really keep your LinkedIn profile up to date, because otherwise you forget that you're doing these projects. So getting into that habit of curating a really nice collection of evidence of a range of skills puts you in that much better position when you are applying for jobs, that you can tailor your presentation and, the proof that you can get the job and then actually be really good at it as well as giving you that confidence. It's nice to see all the things that you have done. Of course, it is more difficult and challenging with students that perhaps are straight out of school, and that was the case with some of the students that you met in my class. And I think then that also highlights them, look, I need to do something about this. And this is why we did invite also yourself and also a student from the Student Senate to come and talk to us, as well as exposing to volunteering opportunities as well, to take that opportunity, especially over summer, to go and seek out those opportunities, either in work or in the community, to start to collect that sort of evidence as their skill. So really make them aware of that. So does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And I like the way you're encouraging them to become like active agents in this ongoing development throughout their university. It's I'm not just coming to learn something. I'm actually thinking as well about what I need to acquire and how it's going to be implemented later. Yeah, thank you for that.
And not leaving until last session, before you graduate, and they've gone, oh yeah, I've just sort of done nothing. I haven't made the most of my time at university. And that's something I really strongly pitch in that first subject as well. And having you come along, the careers team along, as well as workplace learning unit and the student guest speakers, really kind of to get them really thinking about that, and then really get excited about work placement as well.
Thank you. I think one last question from me, because I would like to know from Lauren and Lorraine, what kind of questions are you getting from students about AI at the moment? Where are their concerns? And excuse me if I put a slide up while you're answering.
Well, we do get asked about the hallucinations, the references. So we do get students coming in saying, I can't find this reference. And we search everywhere, and then we say, where did you get that reference? And they'll say, from a friend. So we're getting a few of those, but I've also been getting lots of inquiries about using it in research. So using some of these applications like Research Rabbit, SciSpace, Elicit, how do we use those in researching for literature? And so that's really exciting because these kind of tools can help just be another step in the process of finding all the literature that's out there. Lauren, have you had other queries?
Similar queries. And on the hallucination front, I did have one sort of in the reverse. They had a paragraph of text that they were trying to find a reference to validate it had some sort of facts in it. The same sort of thing. Oh, I found it in a text somewhere, and sort of doing a bit more of a reference interview. My question was, well, why can't you reference that text that you got it from? And sort of uncovered that it was a hallucination and the information wasn't quite accurate. So those kinds of questions have come up on occasion.
Thank you very much. And with that, I will attempt to share my screen again because you know very well we're going to ask for feedback. So there's the barcode one more time to provide feedback on this session and the rest of the conference. Thank you very much to the presenters. Got to say, A+ for keeping to time. Well done. And thanks for everyone coming along today. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Debbie. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Debbie. Great
Thanks,
facilitation. And thanks, everyone, for listening and sharing.